Level 1. The Scout. You're 19 years old in Tehran. The year is 2008. You just graduated from university with a degree in computer engineering, top 5% of your class. You speak 3 languages, Farsi, English, and Arabic. You're exactly what they're looking for. A man approaches you on campus. No uniform, no badge, just a business card with a phone number. He says the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps wants to talk to you about serving your country. This isn't a request. This is an invitation you can't refuse. You call the number. 3 days later, you're sitting in an unmarked building in Tehran, being interviewed by men who never give you their names. They ask about your family. Your father fought in the Iran-Iraq War. Your uncle died in it. They ask about your beliefs. You say you're loyal to the Islamic Republic. You say you want to serve Iran. They ask if you're willing to do things that can never be acknowledged, things that might require you to lie to your family, things that might require you to leave Iran for years at a time, things that might get you killed. You say yes. You don't fully understand what you're agreeing to yet. 2 weeks later, you're accepted into Quds Force, not the regular Revolutionary Guard, Quds Force, the elite special operations unit that operates outside Iran's borders. The unit that conducts covert operations in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Afghanistan. The unit that the Americans call a terrorist organization. The unit that sees itself as the vanguard of the Islamic Revolution. They send you to a training facility outside Tehran. 6 months of intensive instruction. You learn surveillance, how to follow someone without being noticed, how to spot when you're being followed, how to blend into crowds in foreign countries where you don't belong. You learn communications, encrypted messaging, dead drops, how to pass information without direct contact. You learn weapons, pistols, rifles, explosives, not because you'll use them often, but because you need to know how. Most importantly, you learn patience. The instructors repeat this constantly. Quds Force operations take years to develop. You don't rush, you don't improvise, you follow the plan. You wait. Even if waiting means doing nothing for months while living in a foreign country under a fake identity, your first assignment is simple. You're being sent to Iraq. Officially, you're a Syrian businessman looking to invest in Iraqi reconstruction projects. Unofficially, you're there to identify potential assets. Iraqi military officers who might be sympathetic to Iran, Shiite militia leaders who need weapons or training, politicians who can be influenced or bribed. You're not recruiting them yet. You're just making a list. You spend 8 months in Baghdad. You rent an apartment, you open a fake company, you attend business meetings and social events. You make small talk with Iraqi officials while mentally cataloging everything. Who's ambitious? Who's corrupt? Who's angry at the Americans? Who's desperate for money? You file reports every 2 weeks using encrypted email. You never mention what you're really doing. Not to your family. Not to the people you meet. Not even to yourself most of the time. You return to Tehran. Your handler reviews your work. You identified 12 potential assets. The Quds Force will spend the next 2 years cultivating those relationships. Most of them will never know they're being manipulated by Iranian intelligence. That's level 1. You're a scout. You identify targets. Other people do the actual recruitment. Level 2. The handler. You're 23 now. You've proven yourself in Baghdad. They're promoting you. You're now responsible for running assets inside Iraq. Not just identifying them, actually managing them. You have 4 Iraqi contacts. 1 is a colonel in the Iraqi army. 1 is a member of parliament. 1 is a journalist. 1 is a businessman with connections to Sunni tribal leaders. None of them know you work for Quds Force. The colonel thinks you represent a private Iranian company interested in security contracts. The politician thinks you're a wealthy Iranian businessman who shares his political views. The journalist thinks you're a source providing information about Iranian politics. The businessman thinks you're a fellow entrepreneur. They're all wrong. You're their handler. You're extracting information from them while feeding them carefully crafted disinformation. The colonel gives you information about American troop movements, where they're stationed, how many soldiers, what kind of equipment. You pass this information to Quds Force commanders in Tehran. They pass it to Shiite militias in Iraq, who use it to plan attacks on American convoys, roadside bombs, ambushes, rocket attacks. Dozens of American soldiers die because of information your asset provided. The colonel never knows his intelligence reports are being used to kill Americans. He thinks he's just sharing routine information with a business partner. The politician introduces you to other members of parliament. You cultivate relationships with them. You provide them with money, not bribes, campaign contributions. You're helping them get re-elected. In exchange, they support policies favorable to Iran. They oppose American military presence. They support closer ties with Tehran. They don't realize they're being manipulated. They think they're making independent decisions. That's the art of handling assets. Make them think it's their idea. One of your assets gets arrested. The journalist. Iraqi intelligence caught him passing classified documents to a foreign operative. That operative was you. He's being interrogated. You're ordered to leave Iraq immediately. You cross the border into Iran within 6 hours. The journalist is tortured for 3 weeks. He doesn't give you up. He dies in custody. Officially, it's a heart attack. Unofficially, they beat him to death. You feel nothing. You can't afford to. Sentiment is a liability in this work. You file a report about the lost asset. You recommend increasing payments to the remaining 3 to ensure their continued loyalty. Your handler approves. The operation continues. You learn the first rule of Quds Force. Assets are expendable. Information is permanent. Level 3, the recruiter. You're 26. You're not just managing existing assets anymore. You're recruiting new ones. This is the most delicate work in intelligence. You have to identify vulnerable people and turn them into traitors without them realizing what they've become until it's too late. Your target is a Lebanese telecommunications engineer. He works for a company that maintains cell phone networks across Lebanon. He has access to call records, location data, and network infrastructure. This information is invaluable for tracking Hezbollah's enemies. Israeli agents, Saudi spies, Lebanese politicians who oppose Hezbollah. Your job is to recruit him. You spend 4 months building the relationship. You meet him at a conference in Beirut. You strike up a conversation about telecommunications technology. You exchange contact information. You stay in touch. You meet for coffee when you're both in Beirut. You never mention intelligence. You never mention Iran. You're just a fellow professional who shares his interests. Then you identify his pressure point. His daughter needs surgery, an expensive procedure that costs $20,000. His insurance won't cover it. He's desperate. He's looking for loans. He's asking friends and family for help. That's when you make your move. You offer to help. No strings attached. Just one professional helping another. He's hesitant. He asks why you do this. You say because you can. Because helping people is what successful businessmen do. You wire him $20,000. His daughter gets the surgery. She survives. He's grateful. He's indebted to you. 6 months later, you ask for a small favor. Nothing illegal. You just need some call records. A few phone numbers, routine, business intelligence. He's uncomfortable, but he owes you. He provides the records. You thank him. You pay him $5,000 for his trouble. He protests. You insist. You tell him information has value. That's the trap. He just sold you information. He just crossed the line from grateful friend to paid informant. He doesn't realize it yet, but he's yours now. Over the next 2 years, the requests get bigger. More call records, location data for specific phones, access to network infrastructure. Each time, you pay him. Each time, he justifies it. He's not doing anything wrong. He's just providing business intelligence to a friend. He's not a spy. He's not a traitor. Then one day you tell him the truth. You work for Iranian intelligence. The information he's been providing has been used to track and eliminate enemies of the Islamic Republic. He's been a Quds Force asset for 2 years. If he stops cooperating now, you'll expose him. His government will arrest him for espionage. His family will be destroyed. His only option is to keep working for you. He breaks down. He cries. He begs you to let him go. You're sympathetic. You understand his position. But you can't help him. He made his choice when he took the first payment. Now he has to live with the consequences. He keeps working for you. He has no choice. That's level 3. You're not just managing assets anymore. You're creating them. You're turning ordinary people into traitors, and they don't realize it until it's too late. Level 4. The operator. You're 31. You're not behind a desk anymore. You're running operations in the field. High-risk missions that require direct action. Your target is an Iranian dissident living in exile in Turkey. He's a former government official who defected. He's giving interviews to Western media. He's providing information to American intelligence. Tehran wants him eliminated. Your mission is assassination. You spend 3 months planning. You surveil his apartment in Istanbul. You learn his routine. He goes to the same cafe every morning at 8 a.m. He takes the same route. He sits at the same table. He's predictable. That's going to get him killed. You assemble a team. 4 operators. 2 for the hit, 2 for support. You obtain weapons. Untraceable pistols purchased from Turkish arms dealers. You identify escape routes. Multiple exits from the city. Different routes to the border. Backup plans for every contingency. You rehearse the operation 12 times. Everyone knows their role. Everyone knows what happens if something goes wrong. You abort. You never proceed with a compromised operation. The day comes. Your team is in position. The target enters the cafe at 8:03 a.m. He orders his usual coffee. He sits at his usual table. He opens his laptop. Your two shooters enter the cafe. They walk up to his table. They fire 7 shots. 4 hit the target. He dies instantly. The shooters walk out. They don't run. Running attracts attention. They walk to a waiting car 3 blocks away. They drive to a safe house. They change clothes. They shave their beards. They destroy the weapons. They cross into Iran 48 hours later. The Turkish police investigate. They find no evidence, no witnesses, no forensics. The cafe's security camera was disabled the night before by a Quds Force hacker operating from Tehran. The investigation goes cold. The media reports it as an unsolved murder. Only 3 people know the truth. You, your team, and your handler in Tehran. You feel something this time. Not guilt, not remorse, just a recognition that you've crossed another line. You've gone from gathering intelligence to committing murder. You're not a spy anymore. You're an assassin. This is what serving the Islamic Republic requires. This is what defending Iran means. At least that's what you tell yourself. That's level 4. You don't just gather information anymore. You eliminate threats. Permanently. Level 5. The commander. You're 38. You've been in Quds Force for 19 years. You've run operations in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and Turkey. You've recruited dozens of assets. You've planned 6 assassinations. You've supervised attacks on American forces that killed hundreds of soldiers. You're one of the most experienced operators in Quds Force. They promote you to commander. You now oversee an entire theater of operations, 60 operators, hundreds of assets, millions of dollars in annual funding. Your area of responsibility is Syria. The civil war is raging. Assad's government is losing. Quds Force is committed to keeping Assad in power. That means deploying Iranian fighters. That means arming and training Shiite militias. That means coordinating with Hezbollah and Russian forces. That means running operations against rebel groups, ISIS, and anyone else threatening the regime. You're not gathering intelligence anymore. You're waging war. You coordinate airstrikes with Russian commanders. You direct Hezbollah units in battle. You supply weapons to Iranian-backed militias. You run a network of spies inside rebel-held territory, providing targeting information for artillery strikes and drone attacks. Thousands of people die because of decisions you make. Most of them are combatants. Some of them aren't. That's war. One of your operations goes wrong. A missile strike on a supposed rebel command center. Your intelligence was bad. The building wasn't a command center. It was a hospital. 43 people killed. 12 of them children. The international media reports it as a war crime. Human rights organizations demand accountability. The Iranian government denies involvement. You know the truth. Your intelligence was wrong. You approved the strike. Those deaths are on you. You file a classified report explaining what happened. Your superiors in Tehran accept your explanation. Bad intelligence happens in war. No disciplinary action. The operation continues. But you dream about that hospital sometimes. You see the faces of the dead children in the casualty reports. You tell yourself it was an accident. You tell yourself it was necessary. You tell yourself you're fighting for Iran's survival. Most days you believe it. Some days you don't. Level 6, the Ghost. You're 45. You've been in Quds Force for 26 years. You've run operations on 3 continents. You've recruited hundreds of assets. You've planned operations that change the course of wars. You're one of the most senior commanders in Quds Force. And you're about to be burned. Western intelligence agencies have been tracking you for years. The CIA, Mossad, MI6. They've identified you. They know your real name. They know your operational history. They've been building a case. Suddenly, your name appears in leaked documents published by a dissident group. Your photo is in the media. Your cover is blown. You can never operate in the field again. Quds Force pulls you out of Syria. They bring you back to Tehran. They give you a desk job. You're now an analyst and trainer. You teach new recruits. You review operational plans. You write reports. It's important work. But it's not field work. You miss the action. You miss the thrill of running operations. You miss feeling like you're making a difference. Now you're just a bureaucrat in a classified office filing reports that maybe someone reads. Your family doesn't know what you really did for 26 years. Your wife thinks you were a diplomat. Your children think you worked for the foreign ministry. They have no idea you were a Quds Force commander. They don't know about the assassinations. They don't know about the attacks on American soldiers. They don't know about the hospital in Syria. You can never tell them. That's the burden you carry alone. You're 45 years old. You're burned out. You're exhausted. You've given everything to the Islamic Republic. And what do you have to show for it? A desk job. A secret you can never share. Nightmares about the people you've killed. Paranoia about the enemies who want you dead. You live in a secure compound in Tehran. Armed guards. Surveillance cameras. You never use your real name in public. You're a ghost. A man erased from official records. A man who sacrificed everything for a cause he's no longer sure was worth it. Somewhere in Tehran, a 19-year-old computer engineering student is being recruited. Someone is handing him a business card with a phone number. Someone is telling him about serving his country. He's excited. He's idealistic. He thinks he's going to be a hero. He has no idea what he's signing up for. He has no idea that this choice will define and destroy his entire life. He'll learn. They always do. The cycle continues. It never ends. As long as there are wars to fight and secrets to keep, there will always be young men willing to become ghosts. You watch from your office in Tehran. You know his future because you lived it. You want to warn him. You want to tell him to walk away, but you can't because you're still loyal. Still obedient, still serving the Islamic Republic, even as it eats you alive from the inside. That's level 6. The final level, the ghost. The man who gave everything and lost everything. The man who became exactly what his country needed him to be, and discovered too late that his country didn't need men, it needed weapons. And weapons don't retire, they just get stored away until they're needed again.